Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
All right, everybody. So I've been doing kind of a series, I guess, on what I like to call NextOvers, which is the concept of making extra of an ingredient so that you've got it ready to go for next time. And that could be all kinds of things. It could be cooking some extra chicken breast. It could be chopping up extra sweet potato and roasting it. It could be cooking extra rice, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do 3 recipes today. One is a baked rice with summer vegetables. One is a coconut and cashew and herby rice salad, sort of adjacent to tabbouleh, I would say, but we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get there. And then the last one is stir fry. So 2 of those recipes look like the way you would expect a recipe to look, and one of them is more of an outline, guideline, the instructions on how to do something without a recipe. I find sometimes when I sit down to write a recipe, I think, wow, there's like 17 different ways that you could do this, I'm sometimes reluctant to say, this is the way you should do it, right? So I want people to be aware and comfortable that there's a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things. And the more you can get comfortable with that with cooking and not feel too tied to a recipe, then you're more likely to be able to use what you have in your kitchen and your pantry. So we'll talk about variations on all these things along the way, but fried rice definitely lends itself to sort of cleaning out the fridge, cleaning out the freezer, using what you've got. Okay, so to get started, we are going to start with the baked rice recipe. So this is using already cooked rice. There's probably a way you could do this if you didn't have cooked rice where you added the liquid to it and baked it all together that way. It's not what I'm going to do here, but you probably have to play around with the ratios, but it would take longer to cook, but that's definitely possible. But today we're going to start with already cooked rice. And the vegetables that I am using today, I love a combination in the summertime of corn and summer squash and tomatoes. I got these sun gold tomatoes at the farmer's market. Corn's nice and sweet right now. Like that combination in pasta with rice in a salad is all just so delicious. So first step, we're going to get our, the pan you use for this. You can do it 2 ways. If you have a pan that can go from stovetop to oven, great. I recommend you use that. If you don't have a pan, like maybe your pan has a plastic handle or a not oven safe handle, you can definitely transfer this to a baking dish after you've done all your sauteing. So today I'm going to start with this cast iron pan, and we are going to get a little olive oil in it, a couple tablespoons or so. Get that heated up. We might get a little pop in a minute because I realize my pan is a little bit wet still. And we're going to start by cooking all of these vegetables sort of in phases because they don't all cook at exactly the same rate. So we're going to start with the corn, and it really is just going to need a couple of minutes. Corn that's sweet and delicious. You don't really have to cook it much, but we just want to get it a nice sort of golden color on there. So as we go, I'm going to pick out some more obvious corn silks. I cut those off of a fresh cob. You could totally use frozen corn for this if that's what you've got available. And there we go. We're starting to get a little sizzle. I'm going to give each one of these a little seasoning as we go. What's nice is once it gets to the oven stage, everything in it's cooked, so you can sort of taste it with no trouble. Sure, that's what you got. Oh, actually, I put that bowl out of the way, but I'm going to need that bowl back because I'm going to take the corn out of here. So while some of these things are cooking, I want to talk a little bit about cooking rice, because that's another thing that people have very strong opinions about, is cooking rice. And there's, in my experience, not one right way to do it. And sometimes I even use different methods depending on the day, depending on what time I have, depending on what's going on, sometimes even depending on what type of rice I'm using. So the method I tend to go to is either Instant Pot and pressure cook it, because it does go a little faster, or I do what I've done with this rice right here, is just put it in a pot, right? People have opinions about whether you should rinse your rice or not rinse your rice. I spent many years not rinsing my rice and found that I often had gummy rice. And so for me, I do find that rinsing the rice makes you end up with a much fluffier product. I also like to get a little heat on my rice in the pan, either with some olive oil or in a dry pan, to sort of toast it a little bit before I add the liquid, because I find that that just gives a little bit more flavor. Most grains that I cook, I'm gonna toast them in a dry pan first. So almost sort of wakes up all those volatile organic compounds in there that make things smell tasty. All right, so that corn, that's about as far as we need to go. I also realized that I chose a very heavy pan, but I've been working out, so I think we're gonna be able to handle it with one hand. I've been lifting weights. All right. So this recipe called for 4 zucchini and or for any combination of zucchini and squash. And that's a lot of zucchini and squash in a pan at one time if you want any hope of them getting brown and not just steaming. So I would recommend sauteing them in two batches. So this is 1 zucchini and 1 yellow squash. I did the first batch earlier, so it'll be ready to go. So we're gonna, here we go, put those together now. And this is what we're looking for. A little bit of browning on there, some tenderness. That browning is gonna add some nice flavor. It doesn't need to be all perfectly even. It is gonna cook a little bit more, but we wanna get it, you know, a good stretch of the way there. Do you guys have preferred rice cooking methods? How do you do it? You do the pot. Just always wash, awesome. Anybody else use a rice cooker? No? I've never, yeah. Yeah, it's great. I actually find it's very consistent for rice. But you know, the pot works just fine for me. I was taught, once you put that water in there, put the lid on, you know, crank it up to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, and leave it alone. Don't touch. And even this rice, if you see, do we have an overhead? Can you see? There's like the little air holes in there. If I knew where the camera was, I would hold it up. There we go. Okay, there we go. And I typically, you know, I don't often time it because I'm usually around the kitchen paying attention, but I can, you know, tilt it to the side and see if there's still water in there, and there's still water in there, so it needs more time.
Is sticky rice different than regular rice, or what is the way it's made?
Yeah, good question. So today I have some basmati rice, and I also have some short grain rice. And there's different rice varieties that have different amounts of starch in them and will sort of yield a different texture. Even with sticky rice, I do like to still rinse it because I find that it's not even so much a sticky texture that I get if I don't rinse it, it's a gummy. It's like slimy and gummy. So the fluffiness is what we're going for. So yeah, I mean, you can use any rice in any recipe we're using here. You can use leftover takeout rice, if that's what you got. In fact, that's awesome for fried rice, which we'll get to in just a little bit. So let's also talk a little bit about rice varieties and white rice versus brown rice. I am a registered dietitian, so I spend a lot of my time talking to people about whole grains and fiber and all that jazz. And I have used brown rice here today. I think that that is the only rice you should eat? If you don't like brown rice and you like white rice better, then you should use white rice. I'm a firm believer that you should not eat something that you don't like because it is virtuous, because all that's going to end up doing is making you resent your food. There's no reason to resent your food. This pan tends to get a little brown on it. I'm going to give it just... Yeah, jasmine rice is awesome. It cooks very similarly to basmati rice. You know, the healthiness of a rice, the quote-unquote healthiness of a rice, has to do with whether it is whole grain or whether it's had the outside bran and germ polished off of it. So you can get white jasmine rice and you can get brown jasmine rice. And the brown jasmine rice is going to be higher in fiber for sure. I did have a friend, a Korean friend in grad school, who in grad school was just like, oh, I'm so over people telling me to eat brown rice. I grew up eating a lot of white rice my whole life. It is what I like. It is what I'm going to continue eating. And so, yeah, I think there's also a lot of cultural traditions where people eat white rice, and that's just what works for them. And especially if you're, you know, in a period of time where you're not feeling so great, then we want to make sure that you are eating what works for you and what's good for you. And if you're concerned about fiber, get it from another source.
If I recall last time we were here, Mike used black rice.
Black rice, yeah. I might have used the leftover black rice for something that he used before. Yeah, so that's originates in China, and it's just got, you know, other great anthocyanins or plant proteins. I think I get impatient holding the lock button on this. There we go. Now it's behaving. Like, all right. So there we go. We've got our squash nice and browned up. And so now we're going to sort of start building somewhat of a sauce. Before I use the handle, but I have a feeling it's gotten hotter now. We're going to start building somewhat of a sauce out of our tomatoes. So you could use a diced up tomato. I have these Sun Golds. I did go ahead and cut them in half. If you don't feel like you want to cut them in half, you don't have to. They tend to give themselves up a little bit faster when you've cut them in half into some more sauciness. And with the tomatoes, we're also going to do our onion and garlic. This was half a Vidalia onion because it was huge. I would also say don't get overly precious with, you know, amounts, because vegetables come in different sizes, and so, you know, sometimes we'll call for a medium something, or sometimes a recipe will be written and it'll say 2 cups of onion or zucchini, but the size of the onion or zucchini you have doesn't make that amount. I usually try to aim for not having leftovers as much, unless it's something like an onion that I know I'm going to use. I'm going to crank up the heat a good bit and get this really going. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of varieties of rice, it's kind of fun to explore. I'm one of those people where if I see a different color of a bean or a grain, I'm going to buy it out of pure curiosity. Like, what? Quinoa comes in red? Chickpeas come in black? Oh, I think the last time I popped the whole thing off, because I bought this for the chopped salad last time. I was like, I know I've used this. It's just not coming off. That is oregano. Again, fresh, if you've got it in your garden, is great here. I tend to go a little sparingly on dried herbs. They're real old, tend to taste kind of dusty sometimes.
Do you always add the same amount whether it's fresh or dry? Because I thought dry was strong.
It can be. I would say it sort of taste your oregano and find out how it feels. The recipe that I adapted it from had same for both, so. Yeah, do you guys grow herbs at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you grow?
Oregano, thyme, rosemary, basil.
Chives too, yeah, nice. Yeah, it's nice to have all those perennial herbs, the woody ones that hang out and will come back year after year. Although, yeah, I do plant basil every summer. I'm really not great with cilantro. I cannot, it bolts so fast. And I just don't have a lot of success with growing much more. But I do like I get coriander out of it. You guys know that cilantro seeds are the seasoning coriander spice. Yeah, fun fact there. Coriander is one of my favorite dry spices. It's so floral and lovely. I really, really enjoy that. Parsley, yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, so it's an annual, like basil. Parsley, cilantro, basil, now sometimes they'll reseed themselves and pop back up for you. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. All right, so.
Would cumin oregano go good in here? Cumin oregano,
Yeah, I would maybe start slow, right? Add a little bit less of it first, see how it feels. Yeah, I'm gonna give this a little smash and get our heat turned up just a little bit more. See if we can move things along. So the rice that I'm going to use for this is a combination of rice I cooked earlier today. And let's see what we got going on here. All right, so if you taste it, it tastes done. You still have water in there. You can always crank up the heat. But that looks good. All right, so now we're getting nice and juicy and saucy in here. We like that. Again, the tomatoes in this are nice and are going to give it a nice, sort of, it's not really going to bind it, but like a sauciness to it. If you're using vegetables that are not so saucy, you could always toss in some chicken stock or some vegetable stock or some other flavorful liquid. You could put a splash of wine in here if you had it. All right, so we are now going to, if you were going to, everything's all cooked up. If you were going to transfer this is the part where I would transfer it. I would mix it. I would transfer it into whatever your oven-safe dish is and mix it there. All right, and then we're just going to add everything back in here. And then, that corner. Got to remember, if I wear flatter shoes, I'm less likely to end up in the corner of the hood. All right, so we want to gently stir all of this so that we don't throw it all over the place. We want everything to be mixed pretty well. Ah, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I forgot to buy the tomato paste. So we're going to go without it today. But I did use more tomatoes than I would have otherwise.
I don't like
Ah,
Sun-dried tomatoes.
yeah. So yeah, let's talk about that. What people do with leftover tomato paste, because that whole can is sometimes, so many recipes call for one or two tablespoons, and then you have a can of tomato paste. I happen to have 2 children who eat tomato paste like it's frosting. I know, so I just hand them the can. But if you don't have one of those at your house, what do you do with your leftover tomato paste? Yeah, awesome. Do you have like, what do you do with your scoops though? Yeah. So yeah, I tend to do the same thing with a Ziploc bag, right? I'll just like scoop it all in there and sort of smush it all. And then honestly, if you have it spread flat, you can break it off even when it's frozen. Yeah.
But it's easy to lose that Ziploc bag.
It can be. It can be if you don't have or if you're not using tomato paste often enough. Okay, so another thing you could do with this, I'm going to put some of this grated Parmesan in here and stir it up, and then we're going to save some for on top. Oh, I just realized. Is that still on? We'll get that off of there. If you wanted this to be a little bit more sort of bound up and casserole-like, you could throw in an egg or two, and then it's going to behave more like a casserole. Again, I wrote this recipe as a recipe, but this is just like the stir fry, one of those things that you've got leftover rice, you've got some vegetables, you can make a baked rice dish. This is mozzarella cheese. Ooh, that would be a lot of butter. Yeah, I just took mozzarella cheese, chopped it up. We're going to try to get it incorporated in there so that we don't have too many huge, big chunks.
Well, that'll thicken it too, won't it?
That will also thicken it, yes. It could also be, the egg is also nice if you're just trying to get some more protein in your life. I know last summer when my mom was in active treatment, getting chemo, I was trying to get the calories and protein in her every direction I could, anywhere I could. And so if you're in that mode, then, getting an egg in here is great. You could put diced up chicken. Again, like this is your dish. You do what you got. You've got leftover rice. Make it what you want. Okay, so the other thing that I left down here we go, is some basil. I'm going to steal some from down here, stir that in. We're going to top with some Parmesan. Yeah, it's got pizza sort of vibes. I feel like I use that word a lot. All right. And then we're gonna just do a little bit more of this on top and go into the oven. I'm gonna let it get sort of incorporated. I don't want the top to get too brown too fast. So we're gonna give it the first 10 minutes or so covered. And before I go, I do want to taste for seasoning. For sure, yeah. You could do this part ahead, bake it at the last minute. There's my lid. I did preheat the oven earlier because I was toasting other things, so forgot to mention that, but you would want to start with a preheated oven. All right, and then we will switch that over to toast and broil and get that top nice and brown and bubbly. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Thank you, ma'am. All right, let's switch gears over to rice salad. If you give me 1 second. Wash hands, get gloves on. All right. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, and you guys have an outline in there, right? This is one recipe where I've written a recipe, but as I was even emailing the recipes to Lauren yesterday, I was like, oh wait, I have another template for how to build a grain salad without a recipe. So, you know, if you don't have these things, or you don't feel like buying these things, or you don't like one of these ingredients, do it differently. And that how to build a grain-based salad, oh, I left this bowl over here for a reason, because that's what I'm going to build my salad in. Let me see if I can rearrange a little bit so that some of you guys over on the left side have sort of a better sight line. Okay. So when I'm doing a grain-based salad like this, if I'm going to put onion in it, I tend to start and build my vinaigrette, or in this case, I'm just going to be doing lime juice and olive oil. So I'm using a shallot today. Sometimes I would use red onion. Sometimes I would use Vidalia onion is nice and sweet right now. That's lovely. If you've got an onion that's not a sweet onion that has a little bit sharper flavor, and you don't like that raw onion flavor, that's another reason to get that onion in some lemon juice, lime juice, vinegar for a few minutes before you put everything together, because it turns down the volume on that really strong sulfury onion flavor. All right, so I'm going to cut a shallot the same way I would cut an onion. Most of you guys have seen me cut an onion before. We're going to go across. Sometimes I would keep the root all the way intact if I was doing a bigger onion. But go across one way, back the other. I want a fairly nice small mince so that I don't get a big onion chunk in my mouth. Get that right in our bowl. I'm gonna figure out where to put everything. The camera helps so that you guys can see different things, but I want everybody to be able to see what I'm doing. One way I've made this recipe is with peanuts, and I was going to do peanuts today, and then I remembered that we had a lot of cashews in the freezer here, and so I switched to use what we got. No need to buy more peanuts when we have cashews. All right, so shallot is minced. When we're doing lemons and limes and you want to get the most juice out of them, rolling them first and putting your back into it a little bit really makes a lot of difference. You can definitely get a lot more juice out of it. I also tend to, if I'm going to juice something, almost always, there's very few scenarios where I wouldn't also zest, right? Because you're just going to get that much more yummy, limey flavor. That thin peel on the outside, trying to get all green and very little white The white's where things start to get bitter in the pith, but the green is where all the flavorful oils are. So I am using about 6 cups of rice today. I think the recipe calls for 4. And I decided to do an extra, sort of a recipe and a half, if you will, just to make sure we had enough for everybody. So we're going to see how far this gets us. All right.
As the recipe's written, how many people do you think it would serve?
With 4 cups of rice. For a side dish, you're probably going to feed 8 people or so, if everybody had half a cup or so. Let's see. This fun little citrus squeezer has the lime section and the lemon section based on size. That's very lovely. The herbs that I'm using today here are a little bit of cilantro. Again, we had it left over in the freezer. A little heavier on the mint and basil. I think that combination is, and then with the coconut, has a very like summery, tropical sort of feel to it. All right. We'll see how far that gets us. If I need a little bit more lime juice, I might be able to get a little more out of that. And we'll give that a pinch of salt and we'll let it hang out. Okay, so we've got basil. We're going to try to work with the big leaves. I'm not going to be super precious if I get a little stem in there. Because we're going to chop it up pretty nicely. There's a fancy word for the way people chop up basil and mint. I heard somebody say it. Did I hear it? Chiffonade, you got it. I was talking to Q earlier about chefs with egos. And there was a restaurant chef I worked with. I was waiting tables in the restaurant when I was in college. And he had just changed the menu and we had to take a menu test. And I was, I'm an A+ student, right? Like, I'm going to study for that test. But before I had studied one day, he was like, what's chiffonade? And I was like, I don't know. Never heard of that before. But if you put it on the study guide and tell me, I'll study the test, and I'll know. But he was like quizzing me like I was supposed to know these things already. But basically what chiffonade is you're going to take your big leaves and put them in a layer and then roll them up until you get these sort of like thin, stringy sort of things. I'm not going to put them straight into that acid because with basil, it's going to turn brown if it gets there too fast and hangs out. We don't necessarily want it hanging out without a little bit of a rice buffer in there. Yeah, but after that, of course, I have always remembered chiffonade since that rude chef was trying to stump me. I was like, listen, I'm a college student waiting tables, and you have a degree from the Culinary Institute of America, so I would hope that you know more. He did get me to remember it out of spite. Okay, now that I'm thinking about it, I am going to go ahead and now that this onion's had a little bit, we're going to go ahead and put this rice in here and let it start hanging out as well, soaking up some of that. All right. All right, same thing with cilantro. Did I make something last time with this? I feel like I bought this, but I can't remember what I made with it. It didn't go in the chopped salad, though. What did I make last time, folks?
It
Chickpeas. The curry. Aha, here we go. I'm just going to pull the lid off of this guy. And because I'm doing other things, I'm not going to crank up the heat just yet. I'm just going to let it do its thing. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Okay.
10 minutes.
Thank you. Don't you love technology? Sometimes, when it works. All right, that's probably enough of that. I don't want to spend too much time messing with tiny stems. Yeah, now I'm even thinking about, like, what was that dish that had the basil chiffonade? Don't know. That restaurant doesn't even exist anymore. I can't even remember his name, so who knows what he's up to now, but right, seriously. I can know, I see what he looks like. Yeah, I mean, if you're spending your time making college students who work for you feel bad, what are you doing with your life? You want people to feel good about food and about cooking. Do you guys ever watch cooking shows? Yeah? Which ones do you like? Okay. Yeah, he's classic. What do you like about the ones that you like the best versus the ones that you don't like as much?
Doc's things look like they taste great.
Yeah.
And they're fast.
Yeah.
Well, he's fast.
Sure.
Maybe I wouldn't think.
Does he have everything all prepped up ahead of time? No? Does it from the whole? Perfect. Yeah, for sure. All right, we're going to do sort of a similar situation here. Yeah.
And he's not snobby about it. Yeah.
Sure, approachable. So do you ever make the things that you watch on TV? Do you ever make the dishes?
Well, he uses the technique.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that almost is better.
And Dr. commented he would, because he does very simple things that you don't even need to, like, sit there and write notes.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
In fact, I just saw.
Oh, yeah? How old is his granddaughter?
Well, she started at about 6, now she's about 20.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
I don't think she's
Okay. All right, so we're going to get these herbs in here. Heavy on the herbs. Which again, you know, I said it's sort of inspired by tabbouleh, which is a, you know, Mediterranean dish made with bulgur that has parsley, sometimes cucumber and tomatoes, and is often just as much herb as it is grain. We don't quite have that much here. And then toasted coconut flakes. You could do whatever size or style coconut you like. I like a big flake more than the finely ground if I can find it. Can't always find it. And I do, you know, always like it toasted because I think it just adds another layer of flavor, just like I do with nuts. But really, this is all just, you know, chop your stuff and dump it together. Yeah, they're really great tools. All right, let's see. These gloves are getting sticky now. And then I've toasted some cashews. Again, could be peanuts, could be pistachios, could be whatever, almonds, whatever nuts you have and you like. I do think the peanuts is kind of a fun, interesting sort of Southeast Asian flavor profile. I'm going to give these a rough chop. We're not going to be too precious about it. Because I prepped up so many ingredients earlier, I've used most bowls in here. I like to use the clear bowls so you guys can kind of see what's going on a little bit better versus the metal mixing bowls. But I'm also finding this bowl is a little small. As you can see, I'm getting a little wild here. All right, so we're going to give that a taste, see how it feels with the, I'm stuck. With the salt, with the acid, see if we need to squeeze a few more drops of lime juice out of here. Olive oil. That's what I was like, it's dry. That's why. So again, I didn't go to the trouble to make a full vinaigrette here. I think the herbs, like, I mean, you can if you want to, but I think that it doesn't necessarily need it, especially sometimes, you know, with grain salads, with bean salads, we talked about this with the chopped salad, you know, grain and a bean are inherently sort of bland ingredients. I say that with love. Not every ingredient needs to have the punchiest flavor. Yeah, so, and they sort of soak up the other stuff around it. So I think you can have a fair amount of acid. And by acid, I mean your vinegar, your lemon juice, your lime juice. Big stem. There it is. All right. We're going to let that hang out for a minute. Clean up my mess a little bit. We'll put this over here. And then we're going to switch to stir fry. So,
I have a brain question.
tell me, ask me.
Well, being a legume question.
Okay.
Okay, we went to the botanical garden the other night and they
Uh-huh.
had a cooking demonstration with chickpeas.
Uh-huh.
And I had the question, if you added zucchini to that, would it be a complete protein?
No. So, good question. Okay. The complete protein, so the zucchini is not sort of in that same amino acid profile crossover that you're talking about. So for people who aren't as familiar, your body has amino acids, those are the building blocks for proteins, and we have the ones that we call essential, right? All of them are in some foods, right? Some of them are in grains, some of them are in legumes, and when you cross those over together, then you get all of them together. So the grains we're talking about are going to be things like rice, bulgur, wheat, quinoa, all of those sort of grains and pulses, amaranth, millet, etc. And then the legumes are going to be anything that's going to be bean-like. So zucchini is a fruit, actually, botanically. You know, you've probably heard people say that tomato's a fruit. From a culinary standpoint, we tend to sort of kind of arbitrarily classify what we call things a fruit or what we call a vegetable. Mostly in my observations based on the amount of sugar they have in them. You know, and then there's those sort of weird in-between things like an avocado that we don't really know what to call it. And so then you've got, so zucchini botanically is a fruit, even though we call it a vegetable when we're cooking, right? Because the culinary sort of fruit versus vegetable thing, like I said, is arbitrary. But botanically, fruit has a very specific meaning, right? Like flower happened and then fruit was produced. I got you. Great. Good gracious. All right, so in the interim, my little watch timer went off. So let's see what's going on in here. Oh yeah, we're looking bubbly and good. I'd love for it to get a little broily and golden on top, so set a timer for 3 minutes. Just like toasting nuts and seeds goes from not done, not done, not done, done, real fast. Broiling is the same way. Not done, not done, not done, done. Okay, stir fry. Let's get all these ingredients over here where we can see them. Not stir fry, fried rice. Here's one thing that I implore you to do with fried rice, and that is make your decisions about what you're going to put in your fried rice before you turn the heat on, before you turn the pan on, because it's going to go pretty fast. And if you're still rifling around in your refrigerator, dicing carrots, then things are going to get burnt. So what I have chosen here today, we've got some shiitake mushrooms. The other half of that, sweet Vidalia onion. I've got some snow peas, some carrots, some ginger. Where did my microplane go? There you are. We're going to need that for the ginger. And some edamame. This is just a bag of frozen edamame. Now, if you had some, a bag of frozen vegetables in your freezer, no shame in using that here, for sure. We're going to give all of these vegetables just a little heat, not enough to get any sort of like real browning going on. We just want them to not be raw anymore. So if you're trying to brown things, this amount of stuff in a pan is too much because you're just going to end up doing a lot of steaming. But for our purposes here, we just need to I'm still getting acquainted with the heat levels on this induction burner. And I'm going to throw, so the edamame, it's not frozen anymore because it's been out of my freezer well, actually, I never put it in the freezer. When I got home from the grocery store yesterday, I put it in the refrigerator. So it's not going to need a whole lot of time, but once these are going a little bit, while that's cooking, I'm going to prep up some, I know I said to have this done already. I'm going to prep up a little bit of garlic and a little bit of ginger. But really, you just want to get all your vegetables cooked. And then we're going to scoot those out and get the rice in there. We're real close. Set a timer for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, counting down. When you guys are cooking with garlic, I know there's some varieties that you can even buy that have like a really nice big clove. I sometimes resent the tiny, tiny little inside ones that you have to peel individually. I know I told you earlier not to resent your food, but sometimes I feel that way about tiny cloves of garlic that I'm like, oh, you guys are fussy. I want to go back and get a new bowl with the big cloves. But that would be wasteful. You know, I would say that my opinions about that have changed over time. A lot of people say, you know, gas gives you more flexibility. But, you know, there's also starting to be more and more concerns about the amount of benzene going in the air and the air quality when you've got gas. And so a lot of new homes are getting induction burners installed like this. Now, I would say that like the older style sort of like coil electric ones, in my experience, were a little clunkier and a little less responsive to adjustments. And so I think that's where the reputation for like gas is better over. You know, I also read something recently, and I did not validate this at all, but that, where did I read this article? It might have been like in the New York Times or something, about how the gas industry really did a lot of marketing and campaigning to make sure that we believed that gas was superior for cooking. Again, I did not do the research on that, I just read an article. Right, and that's what's in most kitchens for sure. But I think it's changing with better, more responsive induction. There's a lot more chefs that are switching over to induction now.
And I also heard that about the gas, that they're realizing that it's super fast.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, it's fossil fuel. Okay, if I have ginger, I like ginger in my fried rice for sure. Some people go to the trouble to peel their ginger. And if I was maybe making something that was super ginger focused, I might, but usually I don't even bother. I take my microplane and I just grate it with the peel on it. Right? Got a little lime zest in there too. Okay, let's see what we got going on over here. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Yum! You know what? While I'm working on this stir fry, I thought that this was going to be done first, but if you guys want to start serving up this, then I'll keep stir frying. I'll get all this out of the way. Okay, so our vegetables are about done. I'm going to get them out of the pan and switch over. Yeah. All right, a word about cooking oils real quick. If you're doing something that's higher heat, I often would opt for an oil, a more neutral oil with a lower smoke point. I do have olive oil today, so I'm watching to be careful with how hot this is before I throw olive oil in an overly hot pan and get it super smoky. So I'm gonna let that come down just a little bit. Oh, let's get these guys. We're gonna cook those with the rice. Okay, so you've got your leftover rice. We used basmati rice. This is just short grain brown rice. Leftover takeout rice, like I said before, is great. If you have leftover rice and you don't think you're gonna get to it this week, chuck it in the freezer in a Ziploc bag or a freezer container. And then if you are at the store next and you got your bag of frozen vegetables in there already prepped and ready, you've got, you got an egg, you got some edamame, whatever, you've got a beautiful dinner right there ready to go. And so we are going to get a little oil in this pan. And then I'm gonna put the rice in here and kind of smush it down so that it has all the surface area it can get. and just let it, and then now I'm gonna get the heat up a little bit higher so that we can really get that rice a slightly crispy edge on it. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just let that light rice get crispy. Okay, sauce for your stir fry can be whatever you like. Usually it's gonna have some soy sauce in it, right? I often will throw a little acid in there as well. I've got a little toasted sesame oil. This is tamari. It's just a variety of soy sauce that I tend to buy because it is gluten-free. A lot of soy sauce has wheat in it. That doesn't matter if you don't have celiac disease, but I happen to have a friend that has celiac disease, so I don't have to like keep separate things. So I usually just buy this by default. I actually have 2 friends with celiac disease, so I try to be mindful because I do cook for them. I also like a little, and I forgot to pull it out earlier, an acid ingredient of some sort. So you could use rice wine vinegar. I'm gonna use this apple cider vinegar because it's what we've got. So step 1, get those veggies cooked up a little bit. Step 2, get that rice in there, get a little crispy edge on it. If you're using eggs, we'll cook those in just a minute. If you wanted to have your eggs all perfectly and even consistently, you can scramble them up first and put them in there. But you just made a dirty dish. So if you're not so precious about it, you can also just throw them in the pan and scramble them in the pan, and then that's one less dish for you, which feels important to me. All right, so we're working with about 6 cups of rice here. So let me do a little sauce math. Okay, so 2 tablespoons, 6 cups, 2-ish tablespoons of sauce. Are you waiting for me for something?
Nope. Just
Okay.
observing.
Got it and listening. No, you're fine. I just didn't know if you had a question or something.
The twins are hovering. Serve the second one with the fried rice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think those flavor-wise will go better together. But yeah, if you want to start serving this, you want me to send this down to you?
Right.
Here, let's get that on. I was going to put that on there so we don't.
That looks great. More, yes, please.
Okay, so we're looking in the neighborhood of a cup or so of liquid. We're going to go 1/4 cup of that acid. We're going to get up to 3/4 with this soy sauce. I offer a ratio in there. You can follow that or you can go your own way. So there we go. We got about a cup of sauce or so. All right, our rice is probably a little crispy. Starting to get there. Oh yeah, it's even got a little brown on the bottom. I'm just going to scooch it to the side, and we're going to throw a couple eggs in there. I'm going to grab one of these.
Regular brown rice in there? Or what
Mm-hmm.
rice? Just regular brown rice? Okay.
It's a short grain brown rice, but use what you got. I'm going to throw 3 eggs in here today.
This one looks so good.
Yay!
Like, I don't really know if Christy and I are any sort of.
They're just going to sit over there and hoard it. All right, so I'm going to just scramble right here together. loosely scramble. If you like soft scrambled eggs, then cook them till they're soft. Know it's going to keep cooking a little bit. If you like your eggs cooked super, super hard, cook your eggs the way that you want to cook them in your fried rice. Again, know that it's going to keep cooking a little bit after we get everything in there. I'm going to go ahead and get this edamame in here. Because it's not frozen anymore, it's kind of like green peas. It can just sort of like go right in at the end. All right, I'm going to start incorporating all this together. Get those eggs mixed in, and then we're gonna we're gonna get our sauce mixed in, and we're gonna add our vegetables back. Again, there's a lot of you here, and I didn't want anybody to go hungry, so I've been pushing it on the limits of my pans today. If you had a nice wok, you could do it in a wok. I mean, I don't know when I'm gonna, maybe. I mean, if you want us to have a wok. Is there a big, yeah, there's a big pot, a Dutch oven style pot. All right. I'm gonna get this garlic and ginger. Man, this thing is gonna be the end of me.
I know.
Maybe instead of a walk, we need to buy pads.
Right. Like a helmet. That's amazing. Or we could get like a pool noodle and cut it into wedges, and that would be real cute. That'd be real classy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, well, what does OSHA have to say about that? Okay, so if you're using some fresh herbs, if you want to make it spicy and you want to throw in some chili crisp, some kimchi, some cayenne pepper, some whatever spicy things you have going on, this is a good time to do that. These guys were left over from last time as well, so they've seen better days. We're gonna there we go. All right, so before I finish this off, let's give it a taste, make sure it's got enough of everything. Let's get that heat turned down, just like my chopped salad last time. I like to get a representative sample.
Feeling good?
Y'all, I only use one tablespoon spoon per time. There's no shame in having to do it multiple times, though. I do try to model that.
This time too,
I know.
better than we ever have before.
That's right. To wash my hands and put on gloves. Since I'm going from cooked ingredient to raw ingredient. Okay. There we go. Are we let's see. Oh, you guys already have food in front of you.
Yeah,
It's like I haven't even noticed.
They're 1/3 fed.
Wonderful.
That was really good.
You guys had the rice salad. Awesome. I'm in my zone over here.
Yeah, we're just your overly assertive waitress right now.
Right.
I know. If we make you nervous, you can tell us.
I don't get nervous. No, I'm just kidding. No, you guys are great. I just want to make sure that they get the full experience of all that cooked stuff with a little bit of fresh green on top. Because I just think that's how it needs to go. Right. Right. There we go. Okay, so now we have fried rice too. Should I pass this to you guys to serve up? You've deemed it not hot. I have.
Do a little switcheroo.
All right. Switcheroo. There we go. Yeah, I definitely with fried rice, taste as you go, cook as you go. You've got some sort of like starting basis right there in that outline recipe, but as my mom would say, sometimes it's a design as you go project. But do with fried rice, try to make sure you got your stuff pretty close at hand. I think that probably, if you're making, that's a lot of fried rice. If you're making fried rice for 1 or 2 or 4 people at home, it's going to go even faster, for sure. I had a whole lot going on there. Yeah, I find you can do so many things. In fact, we recently shifted over to sort of themed meals for our weekly meal planning so that we've got, and grain bowl night is one of our nights so that we can change it up every week, but also it's just, I am a full-time working mom with 2 children, and I've only got so much brain capacity for meal planning and needed to simplify. But I also don't want to necessarily cook the same thing every single week. And so I can have different variations, and it's purposely on Thursday, because by then we've probably made something with rice, we've probably made something with a bean, and so then I've got those things left over. Obviously, Friday is takeout night. But yeah, I love having and again, it could be rice. All of these recipes, even the fried rice, could be made with farro, could be made with bulgur, could be made with any variety of rice or grain that you have that you like.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.